In 1869, James Johnson, born a free man in Virginia, his wife, Nassau-born Helen Louise DeLay, and Helen's mother and stepfather arrived in Jacksonville, then little more than a village. But wealthy Northerners had discovered Florida, and when the fashionable St. James Hotel was opened, James Johnson became head waiter. The family settled in the suburb known as La Villa, and here in 1871, James Weldon Johnson came into the world, followed 2 years later by his brother, John Rosamond. James became a celebrated educator, songwriter, lawyer, diplomat, editor, poet, and reformer, while Rosamond played a major role in American music and musical theater. Late in his life, James Weldon, living in Harlem, New York, reflected on his remarkable life as he wrote his autobiography.
Well, listen to that. Rosamond and I, with our friend Bob Cole, created that song back in 1902, more than 30 years ago. Even now, as I think over my struggles and successes, I remember the people and events that influenced my life as if it were yesterday. Growing up in La Villa, in the house our father built on Lee Street, visiting him at the elegant St. James Hotel. For years, I believed he was the most important person there. Father was a self-educated man of great integrity. Mother was the first colored woman public school teacher in Florida. And when my school days began at Stanton, Mother was teaching there. She also led the choir at Ebenezer Methodist Church. I recall, as a boy, being filled with awe when I heard the supreme eloquence of the magnificent Frederick Douglass, this friend of Lincoln, the unafraid champion of freedom and equality, made a deep impression on me. My grandmother Barton also influenced my life, taking me to church and introducing me to the wonders of New York City. Unfortunately, her ambition was for me to become a preacher, which I was not inclined to be. But the language and music I discovered in the black church shaped many of my later works, such as God's Trombones.
Lift every voice and sing till even heaven ring.
Lift every voice and sing. I composed those words in 1900, pacing our front porch while Rosamond worked on his musical setting. We wrote the song to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday, to be sung by a chorus of 500 school children. We did not imagine then that the children of Jacksonville would keep singing the song, teaching it to others, until it was being sung in schools and churches throughout the South and elsewhere.
Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Jim, your words are magnificent. I only hope my music does them justice.
Rosamond, your 6 years at the New England Conservatory have paid off admirably.
As did your years at Atlanta University.
Yes, in many ways. They opened my eyes to a much larger world, including some of its injustices, and led me into teaching. These years as principal of Stanton have been a challenge, but also very rewarding.
I enjoyed teaching music, but I enjoyed writing and performing it even more. Jim, we've already had a song published in New York. I know we could be successful. We should join up with Bob Cole and write full time.
Perhaps, Rosamond, perhaps. I will come with you again, just for the summer.
Good. Good.
That summer, we formed a partnership with Bob Cole. Our songs were more sophisticated than the stereotypes of the day, and Rosamond was right. We were successful, even as part-time songwriters. I also studied law, and in 1897 became the first Negro to pass the Florida bar examination, which was held in front of spectators. But some extreme hostility burst out during my examination, reminding me that the racial climate was changing. We were losing many of our hard-won rights. For a while, I published a newspaper, the Daily American, which stressed the importance of civil rights, but it did not succeed financially. However, I did succeed in expanding Stanton into the first public high school for black children in Florida. Then, in May 1901, a huge fire swept through Jacksonville, destroying Stanton. By nightfall, 150 blocks of Jacksonville were in ashes. Fortunately, our home escaped the flames.
Our home is safe, but we aren't. The authorities called in the militia, and there have been many racial clashes. One of these directly involving Jim. A few days after the fire, a light-skinned black reporter from New York asked Jim to read over an article she had written. They agreed to meet in Riverside Park to escape the heat and discuss the article. But as they're leaving, they're met by a mob of yelling, armed militiamen with howling bloodhounds. The reason? They think the woman is white. Jim and the lady are hauled into town to the provost marshal, who fortunately knows Jim, and with great embarrassment releases him. I have never seen my brother so shaken. We left for New York as soon as work started on rebuilding Stanton.
That summer was exciting. We had many song successes. We came to know the great producer Florence Ziegfeld, his wife, singer Hannah Held, the remarkable black comedian Bert Williams. Rosamond decided to stay in New York, and I stayed until the school was rebuilt. Back in Jacksonville, I found the new school was nothing more than a temporary building. That was the beginning of a hard fight with the town council to build a safe, permanent structure. That fall, I made the difficult decision to resign from Stanton and begin a new life in New York City. But even after Rosamond and I moved away, we frequently returned to the house on Lee Street to visit.
When Jim came back to New York, I think he was really surprised at how successful Bob Cole and I had become.
I was, and at the opulence of your clothes, I felt like a country cousin.
We put together a two-man show that's unlike anything ever done by Negro performers before. It has been very well received.
It's a beautifully presented show.
Our songs are currently in 3 or 4 Broadway shows. And when Bob and I were headlining at the Palace Theater in London, we heard our music being played there and in Paris.
Both cities welcomed us with open arms.
Back in New York, the 3 of us keep on writing our songs. Bob and I perform. Jim manages everything, finds time to take classes at Columbia University, and work for the Colored Republican Club. He's also writing a book.
Yes, I titled it The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man.
Could it be about someone we know?
Perhaps, Rosamond. Perhaps. Offered the post of United States Consul in Venezuela as reward for my work with the Republican Committee, I accepted, said goodbye to New York, and with regret, to a lovely young woman named Grace Nail. In Venezuela, there was time to write poetry and finish my book. In 1909, I was reassigned to Nicaragua. Then, on a trip home, Grace Nail accepted my proposal of marriage. Later, writing for the New York Age, I advocated political and economic pressure to force change, and in 1916, at a conference of the NAACP in Armenia, New York, renewed my acquaintance with J.E. Spingarn, its chairman, and with the renowned W.E.B. Du Bois, Within months, I was offered the newly created position of field secretary. It seemed to me that every bit of experience I had had, from being principal of Stanton School to editor of the New York Age, was preparation for the work I was being asked to undertake. Within 3 years, our numbers increased more than tenfold to 100,000 members. We also staged public protests. I recall the silence on July 28, 1917, as 9 or 10,000 people marched down Fifth Avenue to protest a mob attack on the black community of East St. Louis. The only sound, that of muffled drums. In 1920, I became the first Negro executive secretary of the organization. The NAACP faced great challenges in our fight for the rights of the black citizens of America. The great lawyer Clarence Darrow was among our allies, and the relentless editorials of W.B. Du Bois in the crisis focused attention on our efforts. It was a hard struggle. Sometimes my heart was as sore and weary as my feet. And I was always glad to spend time with family and friends.
Jim, as a child, did you ever dream you would become a world-famous leader, author, educator, and songwriter?
Yeah, I wanted to be a drummer. And you? I think you were destined to be a musician.
I agree. But I didn't imagine I would write musicals, be the first black to conduct a white orchestra in a New York theater, or become Oscar Hammerstein's music director at his theater in London. And well, I hear Lift Every Voice and Sing everywhere.
It's amazing. To think we wrote that song under stress, just to meet the needs of a particular moment.
It'll be sung long after we're gone, Jim. Mark my words.
After 10 years leading the NAACP, it was time to recuperate. Now I'm teaching part of the time at Fisk University and working on this autobiography. As I write, I realize that nothing I have done has paid me back so fully in satisfaction as being part creator of Lift Every Voice and Sing. I'm always thrilled deeply when I hear it sung. I'm lifted up on the voices. My brother and I still marvel at the results that have followed. Perhaps especially its selection as NAACP National Hymn. The only comment we can make is that we wrote better than we knew.